everybody that came on the call were automatically muted, and I just unmuted you all. So if you could kind of keep the, your room noise down, if you've got a dog coming in or the phone ringing, we will hear it in our high fidelity speakerphone here.
Thank you all so much.
Hello.
Well, it's 1:45 and we're now officially 15 minutes behind starting the State Leaders Forum. And as we begin, I'd like to say that I'm perfectly able to stay the 15 minutes to make up for any time that we got behind here on. So my feeling is I'd like to say, first of all, welcome to each one of you. And I thank you for not only this time, but the time earlier when I had discussions and phone calls with many of you.
Please, if you're making noise, please mute and then unmute when you want to. I hear there's quite a bit of noise and I'm not too sure who's making it.
And could we mute everybody and just unmute for speakers?
I'll begin.
See, then I don't know when they want to talk.
I'll begin again.
Sounds.
We have some really nice new high-tech stuff, but we haven't quite mastered it yet.
Yeah, if you're using a speakerphone, turn it down. Okay, I think we're good. I'll mute it.
I'll begin. Ann is a new president of the NaCCRA organization, but she's permitted me to do this forum with you today. So I'm going to try to facilitate the next hour and a half. And at the beginning, is there anybody that has to bail out before 3:15 or so? Can we stay for that period? If we can, I'll adjust the times and make sure we have sufficient time for what we need to do. Although at best, this will be a beginning. Of all the events that have happened today, of all the things that we've done some really good work on behalf of CCRC residents. The most significant thing for me is this forum, because it allows me and the NaCCRA organization to perhaps start anew with a better session or a better way of collaborating with state affiliates. This organization recognizes that the bulk of the regulation, the bulk of the oversight, the bulk of things that affect the CCRC a resident that happen at state level. Yet there are things that we share mutual interest on, and even things that were the national level, such as the AICPA, medical deductions, where no matter who takes the lead, it is a national issue. So I really want to tell you at the beginning that we hope this session will contribute to the health and restoration of NaCCRA capabilities and service to our joint clientele. Sometimes we almost get into a competitive relationship. It should not be so. We should be the integrator of things that are common across the United States. I'll be your facilitator this afternoon. I'll not repeat the data covered in the read ahead materials in the interest of time. Each one of you should have received an updated document called the Consolidated Inputs from State Leaders. I tried to put in that document things that I got from you during phone calls with state leaders. I tried to put into there anything I had in advance. In addition to what's in that letter, we have 3 excellent papers, and I want to recognize the people at the front end who submitted documents that could be shared previous to the start of this meeting. That includes the Oregon organization with Gerald Hyland. It includes the New Jersey folks. It includes Washington State. And I hope each of those are represented today, because those papers were indeed very valuable input to this group. However, I do want to start with a kind of a roll call, so I know who's on the phone, and then we'll select the time frame. So can I start, I can't read the screen from here. Who's up in the higher left?
Lori Rogers.
Lori Rogers. Lori, where are you from?
She's muted. She got to unmute her.
Oh,
I did unmute her.
Lori, can you hear me? We'll come back.
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay,
I'm
Lori.
from NaCCRA, the Maryland Association.
The Maryland organization.
Collington, right, Lori?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Where is it from?
Collington, it's in Prince George's County in
Oh, Prince
Maryland.
George's County, okay. Well, thank you and welcome, Lori. And next we have,
Dr.
What
Gilbert?
direction are we going?
are you there? Dr. Gilbert?
Yes, Milton Gilbert.
And from what state, Milton?
I'm from North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Also, you're from North Carolina, who really ran the impetus for the NaCCRA initiative on medical expense deductibility. Thank you. Okay,
I
next.
won't take credit for it, but my organization worked very hard on this program.
Yes, sir, you did. And the next one was who?
Alan. Alan.
Oh, Alan Affleck, is that Alan up there?
Yes, I just joined late, apologies.
Okay, Alan, and you're from the state of Washington. You submitted one of the papers to us,
Yes,
and I appreciate that. Okay, next, it's Alma Smith, if I got that right.
Yeah, this is Alma Smith from Maryland. I'm Broadmead is my community in Cockeysville, Maryland.
Okay,
She's
Alma.
also president of NaCCRA.
Yes, I am president of NaCCRA.
Okay, next.
This is, who's that area code 5815?
David Curtis
Oh,
from Illinois.
Oh, thank you, David. And David is a special guy who I spent a lot of time with on the phone earlier, right, David?
Yes,
I'm really pleased that you would join us today. And who's next?
Who is that, area code 609?
This is Dan Seeger, and I'm trying desperately to join by Skype, but the thing isn't working.
Okay, we're on Zoom.
I mean on Zoom. I'm trying desperately to join on Zoom, and the link that I used to join this morning just isn't working now.
Yeah, I just texted you the link for this meeting, Dan.
But I didn't know how to use that number. Well, I don't want to delay the meeting on this
Okay.
account, but I'm supposed to be representing the Pennsylvania State Association Parker.
Okay, all right.
this is what.
Okay, who else is on the call?
I'm sorry?
The next one, we'll like
Gerard?
Gerard from Oregon. Gerard, do you want to introduce yourself just very briefly?
My name is Gerard Highland. I'm from Mary's Woods, Lake Oswego, Oregon, and we do not have a state association, but I've been representing Oregon.
Thank you. Thank you. Next.
And Blair?
And Blair. Observer from Village on the Green in Florida, our Florida rep.
Yes, that's right. My ears aren't tuned in here.
Okay. Thank
Dan
you.
Blair is the name.
Okay, next.
Unmute her.
This is Susan Hinderleiter from Virginia.
Oh, Susan, welcome, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. What I thought we would do in the next time, and I've got my tidy thing handy, my watch here to keep time. I thought we would start with 5 minutes of commentary from each of the state representatives. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the states that submitted papers. And since Oregon had 2 points in their one paper, I thought we would ask Gerard to start first. And following Gerard, I thought the other 2 states that had information packages, Aflac from Washington, and then followed by Ron Whalen from New Jersey, ought to be the right order of things. And then we'll give 5 minutes to each of the others, should they choose to use it. But the idea is that this is something which we really want to hear from you. I'm going to shut up in a few minutes because we need to learn ways in which NaCCRA can be more effective as an organization in dealing with its state leadership. And that's what we're about today. We're not here to sell you anything. We're here to listen. And so with those ground rules, I'll simply open the floor to Gerard, followed by the Alan, followed by Ron, and then we'll go in turn in alphabetical order to the other states. Does that sound fair enough to go?
Very good.
Okay, Gerard, you're on.
Hey, as I said before, I'm from Oregon. For a number of years, I've been trying to be a state association. We've had a half a dozen luncheons for the offices of the resident councils of different CCRCs in the area. And I find there's no interest in having a state association. One of my observations is that the population over the years has become less and less physically active and mentally acute, and I suspect that plays a role in this. At my own CCRC, there was a time when residents were much more active. They lobbied the state legislature for new laws governing CCRCs. But those people are either deceased or they are just not physically active anymore. Related to that is the issue meeting I attended was in 2010. That was a very spectacular meeting. It was the American Association of Homes and Services for the Aging, and they announced that they were changing their name to Leading Age to reposition themselves to try to continue to be relevant in influencing the decision as to where the aging population would reside. And as I look at some of their papers, it occurs to me that they have not been changing. They've been maybe having difficulty remaining relevant to the aging population. And again, looking around Oregon, it would appear to me that they are losing market share to the for-profits, or residents are just staying in their homes and not moving to CCRCs. So that was the first point I wanted to make. And then the second one, in talking to residents, one in particular, he made the point that the nature of the relationship with between residents and a CCRC is such that it defines a fiduciary duty of the CCRC board of directors and management to residents. And he had suggested requesting a declaratory ruling from a court to establish that if the board of directors was not willing to admit that they had a fiduciary duty to residents. And so that was the second point I wanted to make. Of course, in Oregon, we've had, I guess, one of the few examples of residents of a CCRC opposing to sue management, not of their CCRC, but of Pacific Retirement Services, which manages, and constructs and manages CCRCs. And that was it never went to court, they settled out of court, but that appeared to be a successful complaint, and a win for residents. And it's a complaint that was not confidential, which is unusual for suits of this nature. And a resident put the documents for that complaint up on the internet, and they were available to the public. And Jack now has most of those documents.
I do. But the residents have asked that we not make them generally available. They're worried that the fact that they had that litigation might hurt their occupancy, raise their costs. So there's some sensitivity in some of these things. It's something we might conceivably put in the members only area or something of that sort, but we have to talk about that, Gerard.
Or you might just be able to make a story out of it for,
Well, we can certainly do that.
Maybe convey some privacy to them. But anyway, those are the 2 points in this issue that may be a useful approach to establishing that boards of directors have a fiduciary duty to residents, with the idea of a few CCRCs around the country either convincing that the board to agree to that, or request a declaratory ruling from a court of jurisdiction.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Now, everybody on this call, everybody that's in this room should have had access to every board member anyhow, to the papers that you provided. So I'm gonna ask people to keep that aside, just slip it in, keep your notes handy, because we're gonna come back and see which ones of these things are what we wanna talk about. I wanna thank you, Gerard, you were right on time, that was 5 minutes exactly. So Alan, you got your work cut out for you, State of Washington.
Okay. Well, just to summarize what I said in the paper we submitted is, number one, NaCCRA is important to us in Washington State, and we think it's important to keep it going. We'd rather see it continue even in the caretaker mode for 2 or 3 years, if that's necessary. We hope it's not, but that alternative is much better than seeing NaCCRA no longer exist. Second, difficulty NaCCRA is having to attract volunteers. Gerard also mentioned we face the same problem in Washington State. So I think that's something that we just all live with these days. And the third comment I would make is that it was stated in the material sent to us that NaCCRA would like to collaborate with the states. And I think for that to happen, wearing a state hat, we need more information about NaCCRA. When the board meetings are closed and we don't see any financials, it's very hard to feel involved at all. And so I don't think it's possible to collaborate unless more information is made available to the state. So I'm going to just stop there, and that's a summary of what we already said.
Basil, I would like to give my support to Alan's paper and statement.
Who's speaking?
That was Gerard.
Oh, it was Gerard, okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I should have introduced myself first.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
Please do, for the record, because there's a room full of people listening here.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Alan, and you and I have had that discussion on the phone, and I'm sure we'll reconsider. Ron Whalen, New Jersey.
Maybe I'll do what my wife is suggesting I come down here.
Join me.
Sit next week.
Good.
She's, my dear wife, Bert Whalen, is operating the camera. I got, what I submitted, and I sent around to everybody, was a one-page document just saying, listing what we in New Jersey want from NaCCRA, and what the other was to tell you a little bit about the way we work in New Jersey. We have an organization, and I have had it since, we've had our organization since 1991. It has been, it's an official organization with bylaws and that sort of thing. All states could do that, and it's my fond hope is that all states would somehow set up an organization like ours. So I'll say we want NaCCRA to continue doing the following things: participate in the annual Leading Age National Convention and Expo, interface to national organizations like FASB and the federal government. We'd like NaCCRA to serve as the communications hub for all state CCRC organizations in the United States. In other words, if I want to find out what's happening in Arizona, then I would go through the NaCCRA link to Arizona or to any other state. Grow more state organizations. Don't focus on individuals, focus on states. In states with NaCCRA membership, expand to include all CCRCs. And that's the goal. To grow an organization that has all the states. We do in New Jersey. Sponsor surveys to gather information on issues of common interest and concern. Comment on legislation, accounting standards, insurance regulations, and what have you. I see that going on. I think it's very, very good, and NaCCRA should continue doing that. Publish standard recommended procedures and products of value to state organizations. And provide advisory services and training to state organizations. The NaCCRA board should probably better serve the states if each of the 10 states were represented on the board. And I believe all 10 states that have state membership in NaCCRA should be members of the board. When that happens, then maybe I'll join the board. Orange services and activities. Now this is what we do in New Jersey. I just want to say we maintain a well-designed website. Our website is www.orangeccrc.org. Every state should have a website. Hold annual plenary meetings twice a year. That was big meetings, and they're in large places, usually at CCRC, and we have typically 150 people meet at each meeting. Publish quarterly newsletters. The orange tree is the name, but news items are the orange leaf. Maintain an executive committee with 5 regional organizations and officers, bylaws, elections, and so forth. Deliver information, guidance, and services requested by individual New Jersey CCRCs. Occasionally, people in our state are asking for information. Continue to be committed to serve all CCRCs in New Jersey. We have 26 in the state of New Jersey. Interface to New Jersey state regulating organizations, the Department of Community Affairs in New Jersey. Interface to Leading Age New Jersey, and we do have a good interface to the Leading Age. Jim McCracken, he used to be previously for the state of New Jersey, and now he's the CEO for Leading Age in New Jersey. Carry out New Jersey legislation initiative is required, and we're hard at work at a refund of initial entry payments. Carry out New Jersey legislation, support financial and medical issues as required, and run a tight, low budget operation. Our annual budget is $4,000 a year. Focus on deliverables and organization survival. Don't fight each other. Work arm in arm to succeed. I said for myself, I think maybe I've about used up my time, but I went to an affair where a Presbyterian minister was talking about a community of monks, And it turns out, they got along very well with everything. All the monks in this community were on a different page, but they cared about each other, and that was the most important part.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ron. It occurs to me that maybe this ought to be the seat, because we have the Connecticut representative also around the table here today.
I have no report.
Would you like to comment on your impressions of NaCCRA, John? No comments, okay. All right. Let's go back. Ann, are you representing Maryland or is Alma?
Alma's on the call.
Okay, Alma, do you want to speak out from the state of Maryland?
State of Maryland, we have had a state organization since 1993, when NaCCRA and NaCCRA were established by a Broadmead resident. We have a liaison who we pay $25,000 a year. She has an excellent reputation with our legislators in Annapolis. We go to Annapolis when General Assembly is in session. At that time, we testify and we bring bills to the forefront, and we have an excellent relationship with our legislators who help us in providing legislation that we need to keep our state in order for our residents. I think we have some of the best legislation established. You can go to our website that Ann McKay has established. It's NaCCRA.org. Two other residents helped with establishing this website. I have attended EH Maryland. I have a good relationship with Gil Schumann, who is the CEO of our organization in Maryland. I went last year to that meeting. We have a relationship with NaCCRA. We, as a organization, belong to NaCCRA, and many of our chapters also belong, and we're trying to establish a better relationship by getting more people engaged. Ann has promoted NaCCRA. She gave a speech at our meeting in Annapolis just 2 weeks ago. So we're hoping to be able to contribute more financially to NaCCRA and be good stewards. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Alma. We appreciate you being with us today. Now, I've kind of lost the bubble on who's next. How about North Carolina and Milton Gilbert? Would you be willing to speak? Say a few words, Milton?
Yes, thank you very much, Basil. Let me begin by saying that I feel a little bit like the Johnny-come-lately in that I have really only been the active president since January of this year, even though I was elected in October. But even at that particular time, I had not been active in NaCCRA or the NaCCRA organization prior to that time, because I was so active, first of all, with a sick wife. Some of you are very familiar with that. And secondly, because I was the local president of the CCRC, of which I am part of. I need to cancel the phone call.
I know how you feel. I have that happen all the time.
Hopefully I've canceled it. However, I think
If you get
excuse me. I can't shut this equipment off.
Give me a call back and we'll make it happen. Hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hopefully I've got this thing turned off now, and I apologize for the interruption.
We all experienced the plague of equipment, believe me.
The state of North Carolina, however, has got 2 or 3 goals of which we need to pursue during the next year. And one of those goals will be that we will try to strengthen our organization, and we will try to strengthen it by having regional officers, which we now only have in one of the regions of the state. We need it in 3 regions because, to be blunt with you, North Carolina is a very expansive state. It's very long, and we need representation in all areas. The second thing is that we need more involvement, because we have come to a point, like everybody else that's been speaking here, we've come to a point where our organizational structures seem to somehow or other be reduced in some way. And we need to encourage that. And so that will be one of my major goals during the year. So I guess basically what I'm saying is we've got a lot of work to do this year. We will be doing that work, and I will be encouraging the people to be more active with NaCCRA.
Very much, Dr. Bill. I appreciate your comments. Let's see, I was hoping Margaret Griffin from California would be on the line, but I don't believe she is. Margaret, are you around? I don't think so. So I'd like at this point to give David Curtis a shot at commenting on anything he would like the NaCCRA board and other state leaders to hear. I had a very his remarks by saying I think it was about a 30 to 45 minute call with David in Illinois, and I was really turned on after that dialogue. It's a very positive discussion. David, would you care to offer some comment?
I mean, sure, I'd be happy to. I will say that I'm former president of NaCCRA, the Illinois Continuing Care Residents Association, which no longer exists. And I think all of you might find it interesting how that came to be. And it's not a story I'm particularly happy about, not at all, as a matter of fact. I'll simply say that I found out about NaCCRA in 2014, shortly after I moved into Monarch Landing. And a fellow who was a resident here, Jack Snyder, who subsequently became a member of the NaCCRA board, introduced me to NaCCRA. One thing led to another. He went off to Florida for the summer. I was elected president. At that time, we were just getting started. NaCCRA couldn't quite decide, best we could tell, how they wanted to treat the states. We couldn't get a definitive answer on what the cost would be, what the membership relationship would be. So we sort of struck out on our own, getting a lot of guidance from Jack Cumming. Jack not only supported us with all of his information, and he, for my money, is the most informed person around on NaCCRA. At any rate, he gave us $1,000 to help us get started. And we polled residents at Monarch Landing and got an additional $1,000, gifts of $100 each from about 10 people, with the guarantee, a promise that we would pay them back 50 of it. So they, at least 50. So we started off. We did it the right way. We had a constitution, bylaws, a website. We had monthly meetings. We had at one time almost 400 members, but these 400 members were in 3 particular CCRCs. The one where I lived, we had about 160 members. In the CCRC where another board member for Ilka lived, we had about 100 members. And in a third CCRC where we had a pretty good connection, we had about 40 members. So you total all that up, I'm not sure about the numbers I gave you, but we had well over 300 people in total. And then we had believed all along that we needed to have probably 500 to 700 people in order to make any kind of impact in Illinois. We thought that the legislature was a group we needed to deal with, but we would not be effective in dealing with the legislature if we had a group of 330 people or something like that. So we were trying to get more people. And here came our frustration. We found it very, very difficult to get into other CCRCs simply to give a presentation to tell them what we were interested in. We made phone calls, we sent letters, we invited people to visit our website. We said, we're not trying to sell you anything, this is for your own good. And I'm here to tell you that we got into zero, zip, zilch, nada additional CCRCs. Now that could have been because we weren't very good at it. But on the other hand, one would think we would have gotten a few, and I think we did it the right way. We had a very good introductory paper that we sent to the, we didn't know the exact names of all of the people who were presidents of the resident associations in Illinois, but we would send a letter, main desk, asking that it be forwarded to the resident association, the president of the resident association, give us a call back. Never got a call from even one of them. Had a call back from one person. We set up a meeting to go see them, and they canceled it the day before we were to go. The board sitting down, talking about our lack of success, and picking up vibrations that when it came time for new members to re-up, that we were going to be losing a lot of the people who had signed up the first time because their question was, what have you done for us lately? And we didn't have a good answer for that, except we're trying to grow so that we can do some things. The board met and we decided to disband, and that's what we did. We were incorporated, had insurance. We had a lot going, but it seemed as though we could not interest people in joining. They seemed to be passive, just not interested. It's not a happy story. I think what NaCCRA is doing is a good thing, but something about leading a horse to water, but not making them be able to direct. So that's my sad story.
Well, it's very much appreciated because sometimes I've heard it said that you learn more in adversity and failure than you learn in success. And so I think, David, you're showing up today and your presentation of your own frustration is one that which we share in common with many people. I think your words will resonate with many people, and I thank you for hanging in there. And I hope you'll hang around through the whole session here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with you. Let me add one other thing, if I might, just to let you know that I still retain an interest in what NaCCRA is doing, and I'm going to be working very, very closely with Jack Cumming and his organization that he's starting up, ActiveAging.com. I think if anyone can pull something off to the benefit of those of us who are getting older each day, it probably will be Jack. And but I'm praying for NaCCRA, and if you're active, everything in a row, I'll be joined to get back with you.
Well, and maybe I can give you a ray of hope on this call, if you might. Earlier today, we had a board meeting, and at that board meeting, we approved a resolution called actionaging.com, a NaCCRA initiative, whereby this organization, through donations of some of us, offered to pay the initiation fee for the establishment, for the legal and accounting fees of this actionaging.com. So we believe we're partners with that other piece of NaCCRA, and Jack Cummings remains the research director for this organization.
Well, perfect, and you can count on my participation.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, so this is Gerard Highland in Oregon. If I may comment, when I first tried to contact CCRCs in Oregon, this was at the request of Bob Nicholson, who is vice president of membership. He wanted to, he attempted to call out each CCRC that we would be able to get to, when there are about 10. And he ran into the same problem. He would call marketing, and marketing would not give him the name of the president. So my wife volunteered to try, and she would call the operator, telephone operator, and ask to be connected to the president of the Residents Council. And that was successful in every case.
Yeah.
And then once we got the president, Bob said, well, I'd like to meet with you and a vice president. And in every case, they agreed. And so we got to see about 10 CCRCs in a 3-day whirlwind tour.
Good.
So there are ways to deal with that, but we still don't have a state association. But
sometimes you learn by success, huh?
But at least I got the first step. I got in the door.
Thank you. If I counted right, we still need to hear from Pennsylvania and Virginia. And then I'm going to give, to wrap it up, I'm going to ask Ann Blair to give us a little recap of an initiation that we worked at our CCRC to acquire membership, which I've judged as fairly successful. We rolled up about 100 members in a 90-day period. So, Dan, you're on. Can you hear me, Dan?
Thank you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
No, we can.
Can you hear me? Okay. Serving as Vice President of PARA, which is the Pennsylvania Alliance of Retirement Community Residents in Pennsylvania, that I believe any other state. We have over 90, depending upon how you count them. Some people say we have 110. It's a big state like North Carolina. I don't know how it compares to North Carolina, but it's a state running from east to west. And the present state of the situation in Madrid, CCRC, we only have about a cluster around the capital, Harrisburg, because the travel is too far from the metropolitan areas of Pennsylvania in the east and Pittsburgh in the west. So, we are looking toward the way North Carolina is organized, and I was interested when Dr. Gilbert said he wants to simplify the organization, because we're looking toward North Carolina as a possible way of organizing Pennsylvania, so we can get the minis of the mix. Anyway, since most of our is focused around Harrisburg, the capital, which is in the center of the state, we do have a very lively and, how should I say, sympathetic with Leading Age, and follow Leading Age's lead in terms of lobbying the legislature. And that's a very reinforcing dynamic between Leading Age and our state. I think the only other thing I would say is that at every executive committee meeting of Parker and at every quarterly meeting of the membership of Parker, they always put NaCCRA on the agenda, always allow me an opportunity to report on what is happening in NaCCRA. So interest. I keep trying to get to join NaCCRA. I don't every time I give a speech, that's the way I end it. I don't know how much it has had. In terms of our meetings, most of them are what you might call meetings. We have a resource person on end-of-life issues or on observation, hospital admissions, and that kind of thing. So that's what's happening. If I could just comment, I do think that the problem that NaCCRA has of trying to reach out to the potential 600,000 or 700,000 people who ought to be in our organization is the key issue that we somehow have to find a way to resolve. I think that the reality is that the only 1 in 10 CCRC members would join, but even if we got 1 in 10 out of 200,000, we would have a very strong organization. But the problem of finding a way to reach out directly to potential members is simply we have not yet solved. So that's, I think, about all I wanted to say. So I hope it's helpful.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your service in the past. You're one of our presidents, and you're always active, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Now, I think we have also on the line Susan Hinderlater from Virginia. Susan, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
You probably used, since Virginia starts with a V, you've got to wait for a while.
You collect a lot of information that way, though.
Okay, you can just say me too or something. So it's your time.
Okay. We too are a formal organization with bylaws. We've been in existence for over 10 years. In Virginia, there are some 50 odd CCRCs. However, we draw our membership from 8 of those. And right now, NaCCRA has somewhere between 500 and 600 members statewide. We too have about 4 meetings per year and publish a newsletter after each of those meetings. That newsletter that means we've got some fresh information from the communities to share. And it also means that we can send those newsletters not only to each member, individual member of NaCCRA, but we also send it to our state and federal legislators, just to keep the idea that they've got this block of people out there, and also try and make contact with those CCRCs who are not yet active in NaCCRA. What else? I'm not sure there's much of anything else that we do differently than anyone else does. We keep plugging along.
You've got a few minutes left. What would you suggest would be a useful initiative to improve the collaboration between your organization in Virginia and NaCCRA? Would you want to address that from that?
I think for me at least, it would be helpful if there was better communications between us. I noticed that someone has recommended that the presidents be on the board. I've been president for about a year. I don't necessarily think they need to be official members of the board, but we need to be able to attend the meetings even by Zoom to see what's going on and align what we do with what you do.
Okay. So board representation is one thing.
Yeah, it would be helpful.
Okay, any others?
Not really. Helpful to get the information out about the medical information. We did participate, and it came out that information came out just after our last meeting last fall, so we were able to put flyers in every newsletter we send out, with the recommendation that people contact their legislators to weigh in on the issue.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Now, we've got one other person, if I've kept track correctly, and Ann Blair, do you want to kind of recap the initiative of the membership? Because it seems like a common theme, and I know you're not prepared to speak for Florida in general, but that was a useful one where you can speak for our CCRC.
Yes, well, last year when Basil started his initiative to grow the membership, he started right here, Village on the Green. And while we did have some NaCCRA members, the way we went about doing it was we have 6 mid-rise buildings and about, oh gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. Anyway, a number of villas. And we went individually to each building, started Basil doing the main talking and a little support team of 2 or 3 of us with him with paperwork. And the buildings get together usually once a month or once every couple of weeks for a little cocktail hour before dinner. And we weaseled our way into being invited to give a little talk, which Basil did, and just talked about what NaCCRA was, how it was different from the Florida organization, both of which were useful and necessary, but we were speaking to NaCCRA at that particular point. And over the course of time, last year, we grew membership from very few to 100. So we thought that was pretty good. And in doing that, I had access to the local membership database. So whenever there were email addresses that changed or anything like that, I was able to keep up with that. Then when Anne would send forth any documents from NaCCRA, I quickly forwarded them to our whole population, and it just grows that way, very incrementally. And then more recently, Basil and the president of our resident council have met with our providers, other communities in Florida, several of them in South Florida, to try to build another step or 2 further. And that's still in the works, but it just sure takes time and just incremental efforts. But I think you do get there in the end, it seems to me. At least we're working on it. What did I leave out, Basil?
Not a thing, Ann, and your timing's perfect.
Okay.
We have exactly a half hour left according to my watch. And what I'd like to do is identify some of the areas that seem to be a common thing to talk about. And I'd like you all on the phone and here to help me with that. One of the things that seemed to jump out across the board is the idea of difficulty generating interest, generating solicitation of membership, all the hindrances that stand in the way of actually reaching out to a population. That would be one topic for me. I would say solicitation, dialogue with potential members. Now, you all are our state members, okay, on the phone. So that's one topic. But I wonder how states and local communities can really help us outreach to various people in your communities. We have people in most communities. So that's one topic, outreach solicitation. And I guess I could call that aging too, because generating enthusiasm has also been difficult. That's all part of the same problem. I also wrote down on my list board representation. And I really would like to pick up on that one. In other words, how do states interact and participate in this board of directors that is my pleasure to be part of for the last year? How we do that is really important. There have been papers suggesting that the state representatives, the state leadership serve on the NaCCRA board. And I tell you, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think that critical mass of people who are leading in a particular state can only enhance the effectiveness of the national board. I think that's a wonderful idea, but that would be another topic. I want to go back to Gerard's original paper because I think he identified in that paper something that I really resonated with, and that is, if I can find the paper, the need. He talked about fiduciary responsibility of provider to resident. Right, Gerard? Is that a one line okay for that?
Yes.
But also I want to reach back, Gerard, because you also in our what do we call it, Congress in New Orleans, you had one recommendation which hasn't been acted on because we've been basically dealing with plumbing issues since the loss of our partners. But there was also a recommendation to reinstate the financial integrity, or I forgot what we called it.
Financial soundness.
Financial solvency committee. Huh?
Soundness.
Financial soundness. Thank you so much. I couldn't pull out the word, but I think that's related. I think if we had, if that fiduciary responsibility is also some part of that issue, and so that deals with me with an issue that perhaps is common around all of our state organizations and the national organization as well. So I thought that was useful. So that's 3 subjects, and then I also picked up from a number of people the fact that it is difficult to solicit, and I guess I've said that in spades, but that's one of the reasons I didn't plan to put Ann on the spot, but orchestrating those local initiatives to grant membership is important. Now, sometimes it's not important, and Ron Whalen in New Jersey doesn't resonate with that drive. He would rather have an organization of organizations. The only thing I would add to that dialogue is that I mentioned earlier today that 80% of the revenues that we got come from individual membership, and I don't know how we replace those if we don't have them. So I think that requires a little more dialogue. So with those 4 subjects, with the aging, conflict, lack of interest, I'd like to devote maybe 5 minutes to each of those. Is there anything else you would like me to add? Anything not included in those areas that the group here can cross feed? Yes, ma'am.
I have a short question, and that is, has anybody here had experience trying to use your marketing department to make an initial plea for NaCCRA?
Your marketing department, who's your, what marketing? Huh?
Ingleside, we have a marketing department.
As part of the provider?
Yeah.
Okay, we can ask that question. I don't know. We haven't at the Village on the Green, I know. Yes.
Quick comment on that idea. I think over the last 5 years or so, NaCCRA and NaCCRA have been less oppositional than they were in the past. We're now actively collaborating with Leading Age, et cetera. So what would have been, I think, almost unthinkable 5 years ago, the union is going to management and asking for a little help getting organized. That isn't quite the case anymore. And with that new sense of who we are and where we're going, it might be a great idea.
Well, maybe we talk about the Leading Age issue too. That's another one that's come up.
But I mean, that's just my own personal sense. We used to be union and management. We're not that anymore. We are
all the time, but sometimes
collaborators on a common, well, at least it's good reason to walk into the sales office and say, would you put a NaCCRA flyer in your brochures?
Thank you. That makes sense. Okay, let's tee up the first issue, which is the solicitation, the lack of enthusiasm, the passivity of our potential members. Let's talk about that. Anybody on the phone, it's going to be a little hard, but if you raise your hand, we can call on you. I can see your pictures there. So let's throw it open to voice discussion, and I'll limit it to 4 minutes on this discussion. But let's try it. on that issue, any solutions, any things that have worked for you? What did you think of Ann's piece of Village on the Green? Is that doable for you?
This is Susan in Virginia. We do some of the same kinds of things to, at least in my own CCRC, go to the various programs that are already available. A couple of times a year, VACRA has a meeting, and we use TED Talks as a vehicle to talk about something that's important to seniors. And there's a wealth of those out there and available for use for discussion.
Yes, thank you. That's good. I think what you're saying is that it not only is outreach, it's organized outreach to something to offer people, something we're going to tell them.
And we also we have a welcoming committee that welcomes every new member, and part of the packet is information on VACRA.
Okay, all right.
That's good idea.
Does anyone?
Yeah, this is David Curtis in Illinois again.
Okay, David, you're on.
One thing, when you're soliciting, are you soliciting for people to join NaCCRA, that is the national organization, or are you soliciting for people to join the state organization? Seems to me that while the two are related, they're not the same. And if you had a piece prepared in advance, as we did here in Illinois, describing what your goals are and the like, it really helps. The one thing we didn't have, and I'm not sure that it exists even now, would be an accomplishment, what we have done. It seemed like we were trying to organize a group that was sort of amorphous. You know, it hadn't done anything. It spent a lot of time spinning wheels. So have some information such that the people you're soliciting will have some reasonable expectation that something might get done.
Okay. Thank you, David. I think that is important.
David, this is Ann McKay. Could you send me your piece?
You know, when we shut that down, I hardly saved a single piece of paper.
Oh.
I might have one or two things around. You know, we got down to the point where we were cleaning everything out, not much storage space, and my wife said, let it go, and I'm afraid I did. I will look, okay?
Thank you.
My friend Ann, on the spot, but she keeps really good records. I suspect we could share what we did at Village on the Green, because it was an educational program. We'd also talk about TED Talks and things of that nature.
Yes, I had forgotten to mention that, but we did do that one session. We didn't have that many new people attending. It was the same ones that showed interest all along. But we tried to put forth what NaCCRA has done for people, and we tried to have as much literature as we could. And we had 2 or 3 people that were quite interested, you know, it just goes in small increments, I think, but I think the tie-in with the state organization makes a lot of sense to work back and forth.
Yeah, we can share that, I'm sure, with you. And I also would like to say that was a bit of a problem in Florida. We've got state representatives' ears right now, is that some people, the NaCCRA, the FLICR of the Florida Life Care organization is very strong. They have 14,000 members. So, and in the state of Florida, we have a total of maybe 700-800 NaCCRA members. So they're much larger. And some people on the state side viewed that as for either good or bad reasons, as competition. And so we always started, we had a core team of residents. 2 of them were officers in the state organization and 2 from FLICR. So we tried to balance that so that there was no question that our position was both are necessary, both the state organization and the national organization. They're hand in glove. They just have just different realms of expertise, but a large area of interface. So I think that that is really important. I'm gonna offer this for comment one more time, but I think we need to move to the next topic. Are there any other comments on the solicitation issue? I think this is something that we can put on the to-do docket. I'm gonna suggest this is a to-do docket item to prepare and identify promotional materials, things that happen, and things that happen at the local level. If we can't develop strong local efforts at the CCRC level, I do not think we could do it at any higher level. I think this happens at CCRCs. Go ahead, Jack, you're on.
Another to-do is a brochure for prospective members of NaCCRA. We've had one that hasn't been too successful, and I don't know if anyone is working on one to succeed at or not.
Can I answer that, Jack? We have this RFP, which includes a lot of different dimensions. The request for proposal, in part, does look at our promotional and marketing activities, which would include a brochure, at least in my mind. So that is being looked at, and if we execute the contract, because that's going to be the very last question of the day, is it the recommendation of these state organizations that NaCCRA is wise to expend this $25,000 to look at our systems and at our processes? Because I want the concurrence, or I hope this organization still wants the concurrence of state people that this is a wise investment. It's a big chunk of money. It's a third or fourth of our total net asset position. But if it works, if we get something that's new and exciting, but put that in the back of your mind. It's a 3:15 before we get off the air. Okay? Anything else that needs to be discussed?
Ian McKay, could you share NaCCRA, the Maryland's trifold brochure of how we promote NaCCRA? Because Ian worked on this, and
since I worked on it, got somebody to design a logo.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might have an interim solution.
And we do have the member forum that people can upload content and have it to share among each other.
I can speak for Jack.
Yeah.
This, when I visited with him, where's the camera? This is the Virginia, Susan, are you paying attention? This is a Virginia brochure, which I think is a jump out at you. I'm not commenting on this, the look and feel. Here's the NaCCRA brochure.
Wait, she has to get it better.
Ah, yeah.
I'm zooming in.
It's spicy.
It is our current NaCCRA flyer that we do put out in various places.
Okay. Another item, if I could move past that one, let's talk about the Financial Soundness Committee. There may be quick concerns, but at least at the Congress that we had in October in New Orleans, this was one of the accepted action items at the end of the day. And I also one that I would like to see this, but that's just my opinion. I'm looking for the opinion of the state leadership. Financial soundness is important to all of us, and it is.
We can't hear you over the clacking. There's some clacking going on. Maybe should we? It stopped.
Okay. All right. I don't know. Did everybody hear what I was? My one sentence thing. My one sentence summary was: do Cisco believe that in response to what Gerard had written on the fiduciary responsibility of providers to residents, and in view of the prior congressional papers, that we should immediately, if not sooner, reactivate or restore the Financial Soundness Committee people. So I'd like a discussion on that. We can devote a few minutes to that topic.
Basil, this is Gerard.
Yeah.
I was going as chair of the Financial Soundness Committee. They certainly favor bringing it back or continuing it. But one problem that is difficult to surmount is if you put guidance together on what constitutes a financially sound CCRC, there are likely to be a number of people in the room or on the board of NaCCRA that are going to observe that their CCRC is not financially sound, and then object to that. And because many CCRCs are viewed as financially sound if they're not on the verge of bankruptcy.
Well, you know, I'm going to add to that by recent action, and Dan, you may want to pick up on this. Dan proposed that the NaCCRA organization endorse a pamphlet that he's put together, a 16-pager, which is a guide. I know there are other guides, but guides for perspective or evaluating financials of a prospective CCRC. Now, this is from the vantage point of somebody thinking about moving to one. He clearly, in that document, and most of the board members have had an opportunity to look at it, clearly in that document, he identifies the importance of a net asset position and a positive net asset position. Now, I don't have any problem with that, except I get chest pains because I live in a place with a negative net asset position. But I think we serve a greater cause than just promoting our own particular CCRC.
Yes, Dan was the president that appointed me chair of the Financial Soundness Committee.
He's a smart man, isn't he?
and that was a position I was advocating as a quick and simple way of looking at the financial statements and concluding whether a CCRC is financially sound. It doesn't have a significant positive net assets, and are those growing? It's not just looking at a single data point, but you should look at the trend and to how significant is it. You're losing, say, $6 million a year, and you're at $50 million of minus net assets. Are you going to succeed?
Exactly. Yeah, the idea of net worth goes away if you say otherwise. Yes.
This is Jim Fantasy. I'm thinking maybe a different spin on the whole financial soundness and guidelines, more of an information repository, comparative database. So Consumer Reports doesn't say this is acceptable and this isn't. They say here's the highest score we see on this 0 to 60 in a fuel economy. So I think automobile ratings, what NaCCRA could do uniquely, because of where it sits in the world, is have a database of annual reports and put the comparative statistics. So think Consumer Reports in cars. They evaluate across brands and types of models. They evaluate across years, but they don't strictly evaluate. They give you data. You can say, I'll sacrifice some mileage for some performance. You just said something really critical. You're not too worried about a negative asset position because you think there are offsetting strengths. That too, but let the reader have a little more control over what they make of the data, but the value added by NaCCRA would be the aggregation and presentation of the data. That could be, I think it's feasible at the first cut, but it would require time and some expert effort.
I was going to think that we could list as an action item to restore this committee, and I thought that maybe the gentleman from Oregon would like to be the next chair of the committee, and I think maybe we found a member for the committee here today. So what it takes, if we have committees, if we really want to get this underway, it's going to have to take people who are willing to serve on those particular committees. But I'd like to list it as one of the outcomes of this session and link it to what we got before from the Congress in New Orleans. Is that fair enough? Can we list that as an action item? Whether it happens or not is up to us to implement, but for right now, I would like it to be the conclusion of this group if I've stated it and you all agree with it.
I agree, certainly.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Basil, this is Dan.
Yeah.
I certainly think that this issue of financial soundness is not going to go away, and I think we should continue to work on it. So I think the reestablishment of a financial soundness committee would be a good idea.
Thank you, Dan. I'd like to go to another question because this is a packed hour and a half, but it's really important to me, and that is how much, to what degree do state leaders and participate in the governance of NaCCRA? I'd like to just hear from the members here. I like to talk, but I'm more than willing to listen to what you say.
This is Susan from Virginia. I'm a little concerned about bringing the presidents onto the board as active in very active roles. We're having the same problems that you do in getting members, getting people to participate. And invariably, when roles are not met in the state organization, it's the president who has to fill that role. Quite honestly, we got our hands full.
And you know, I can echo that, Susan, even though Pat Aarons from Florida was not on the phone today, when I spoke to her by phone, that was her number one issue. She says, I've been the president or chair of the Florida organization for 5 or 6 years, and the only reason is I can't find another one, we can't get anybody else to backfill. So I know that, but let's think about something in between. If you don't want to be the president of Virginia and a board member with NaCCRA, what mechanism, what facilitates the ability of state voices and state concerns and state issues to float into the NaCCRA voice? If we're disconnected from the states, I think we're disconnected from a lot of our membership. So let's think of how we might do that. I mean, there's many options. We could have a council of chairs. We could always meet with the board when the board met. I'm not trying to put answers on the floor, but my friend Walt Boyer, who's got a lot more experience in this than I do, he said, state presidents on board of directors, this was the original organization of the NaCCRA board. You know, it was founded by the Florida and the Maryland unit. Somebody brought that up to begin with. NaCCRA's a product, a child of that marriage. It was abandoned when realizing having 50 board members would be unwieldy. We haven't had that problem yet. And how do state presidents think they might be resolved for the next, what might be resolved for the next board structure? How could we do it? In other words, I think what Walt said. Walt, do you want to comment on that?
I think, we say we want to have state presidents on the board, but state presidents are busy themselves. So maybe the state would prefer to have a former state president on the committee, or elect somebody that has more interest in national affairs than state affairs, if they can find somebody like that. But just having the state president as the only person that was eligible, I think is too limiting. If you add former state presidents or to that group, you may find that there's somebody that is willing to work on the NaCCRA board. Second thing is, we would have to change the bylaws, obviously, and there probably, if we really worry about this issue of 50 state presidents and an unwieldy board, perhaps we should put some sort of limitation on it and have the state presidents elect a limited number, such as maybe somewhere between 6 to 10 people to be on the board from among their candidates. Those are kinds of ideas that go floating through my mind. But I think it's the state.
So listen, Dan, if I could say something.
Decide how that works.
Okay, just.
Hold on, Dan. I want to make sure Walt is finished. Okay, Walt's finished. Dan, you're up next.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Walt.
That's okay.
Here in Pennsylvania, what the sort of division of labor, which has seemed to occur naturally between our president, who's Ivan Dean Smith, and myself as vice president, is that she sort of turned over to me the NaCCRA liaison function. And it could be that without changing the bylaws, the board could welcome as guests at its meeting representatives of data associations decided by the state association who they want to send, the president, the vice president, the former president. All these things have been suggested. And this could be carried on as long as the number of state associations who do this is not unwieldy. And at such time as we begin to have a situation where the room is crowded with state representatives, we could change the system. But in the meantime, we could try to strengthen the relationship between the states and the NaCCRA, the State Association NaCCRA, by welcoming to NaCCRA board meetings guests from states who care to send a guest.
Thank you, Dan. I think we've had probably about all the dialogue on this. Can we say that a conclusion or an outcome of this leaders forum is that the consensus is that somehow we've got to strengthen the communication and dialogue between our state affiliates and the central NaCCRA board? Can we make that statement? Anybody object to that statement? Then that statement requires that we drill into it a little bit and identify the logistics that make it happen, whether it's that kind of appointment, some sort of arrangement similar to what you have in Pennsylvania, or similar to what they had in Maryland, which was the assignment. That's how we got Ann, I understand.
That's right. To attend the board meeting video calls.
Yeah, so there's many ways to skin that cat, if you can stand that language. But the point is that somehow we've got to achieve a greater dialogue and a more supportive.
Well, and actually, we could try it out for now, given that there are some board slots that are available for state. I'll let you finish it.
My last point, what I've been saving this up for, we got about 5 minutes to talk about it. I would really love to walk away from this meeting with some state representatives on this board, and we have positions that can be appointed immediately. And so what I'm saying is this isn't, I'm a goonist. This is a matter that we could act upon fairly quickly. I'm not suggesting it has to be done at this table, but I'm keying off of something I hadn't intended to say, but when Ron Whalen said that if the other states were on there, he'd think about joining that board as well. I think that's exactly right. I think that we need state representatives. I don't think it could ever be all of them. I think that would be too hard. Some of our states are very strong, others are having their difficulties. But if we had representation, we would be a stronger organization from responding if it's only to 5, 6, 7 states. So I would really like to walk away from this activity today with the understanding that we have board positions to be filled immediately. We are not up to quota. We just went through an election process. We welcomed new people to the board, but this year we've lost more than we've gained, even with appointments. And so our board structure is not as strong or robust as it likely to be, and it can only be stronger if we had Virginia, if we had North Carolina, if we had, if we had Illinois. I mean, we have a lot of board positions. And to be frank, you don't have to be a state affiliate to be on this board. You can be simply a member. David Curtis could be part of it.
Yeah.
So my point is, we need this. We're better together, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so let's talk about that. That's the final point of this.
May I speak?
Oh, certainly. I didn't know you were there, Kim.
Yeah, I've been here a while. I've been listening and being quiet, but I think you better really study this thing of incorporating state organization people into NaCCRA. Because I'm on the board of the local FLICR deal here. And I'm telling you that they look at things very differently than we do. We look at the things in a national perspective and try to come up and formulate ideas and plans that we can hand down to this. I think that we should step very slowly into considering bringing state board people on the board without them duly being elected.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Ken.
Yes.
Any other commentary on that issue? Well, in conclusion, I have other things that I could put on the table. We've got just 2 minutes left according to the watch I've been watching by. And I would like to give anybody who's on this state leader call an opportunity to identify any additional items that you would like considered as we bring forth the relationship between the state organizations and the national organizations. Let's start here in the room, the ones of you that I can see. Walt, you want to begin?
Yeah, how many vacancies do we have right now?
We got 2 at least.
2, okay.
So we have two board positions, and your new president, Ann McKay, can appoint people to the board.
And I have some names and numbers I've been picking up off of this call.
Yeah, there you go. So, but really, we want you to be enthusiastic about serving. I mean, it has been an easy job, I have to tell you, that this year has had its challenges, but it also has its rewards, because we do serve a really great population that deserves attention of a national board like this.
I'll have some names to recommend later.
Okay, Jack, thank you. Anybody else here at the table? Ron, you're a state guy. What do you say?
I'm not sure I stressed it enough, but our focus in Orange and New Jersey is we don't really count their noses.
Yes, I realize that, yeah.
We're an association of associations, and maybe there needs to be at least one other in the United States that has that same philosophy. And we might find that eventually it could grow much rapidly from in all the states, because you're not counting noses.
Well, actually, Maryland has that similar model. Their chapters from a CCRC become the member of NaCCRA.
Well, both.
Yeah.
You know, we have individual and chapter membership, but we count chapters in the sense that more chapters is a good thing.
I think we're a big tent. We can have multiple.
Yeah.
And we have non-chapter members.
And if I can just take a second on that, there are issues. If I'm a resident, as a resident, the thing I really care about is the entrance deposit, because that's the only thing that is truly distinctive to being a CCRC resident and governance. But I mean, if I'm a citizen, I care about nursing care. But that's kind of the point. Aside from the entrance deposit, if I say what is unique to being a CCRC resident that I might want an interest group, there isn't a heck of a lot. The other interests are all senior interests and citizen interests. So I think but they're local, community, individual, CCFC, town, state, national.
Okay, thank you very much. How about the people on the call? Anybody want to start across Susan from Virginia? I'll do it upside down coming back. You got any additional comments, Susan? Any other? No. Okay, how about Washington? That's where I messed up the alphabet. Alan, do you have anything else? I lose Alan during this, okay. Pennsylvania, Dan Seeger, you happy? Any other comment?
I don't think I have to, Basil, thank you.
Okay, Gerard?
Basil, I think I would just add that in addition to the State Association president, to open it to past presidents or to a person appointed by the State Association.
Okay, that's a good point. It doesn't have to be the current leadership. It can be some past president, somebody else who can represent. That's a good point. Thank you, Gerard. Let's see, if that was Oregon, how about North Carolina, Dr. Gilbert?
North Carolina, I think our biggest problem at this point is that we need to get our own house in order. And as we get that in order, we will be turning to Walt to give us insights into what we can do to strengthen our national representation. But please allow us to get North Carolina House in order to start with.
Well, I think you got a terrific representative on the board right now.
I think we do too. And for that very reason, I have made him a member of the executive committee, particularly so that he will respond to what National would have us do.
Okay. Marilyn, Alan Smith, do you have any other comments?
The two Maryland representatives, Jim Fennessy from Crest and Ian McKay, who is our representative to NaCCRA. This is how we start. We were able to send a representative because Ian agreed to do this. And now you've stolen her from us as your president, but I'm happy that she has taken this position, and I know she will still work with Maryland.
I would imagine she will. Thank you, Alvin. Let's see, David, do you have anything else from Illinois?
Yes, two things. One, I think it's very important to have a state representative of some sort on the board. But secondly, and probably more importantly, when I was active in the concerns of NaCCRA and what was going on, kept running into the problem that NaCCRA's own constitution and bylaws prevented the board from taking necessary and appropriate action sometimes. You look at the bylaws and say, oh my gosh, you can't do this. I say, simplify your bylaws, simplify your constitution so that your elected board members can indeed take action when they believe action is to be taken and if people don't like what the board's done, vote for that out. So you need to have an organization that can move when movement needs to be made.
Is that the Illinois version of Drain the Swamp?
There you go. That's indeed.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's everybody. Anybody? Ann, do you have anything else to?
No, I don't. Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, folks, according to my watch, it's 3:18. Now that's 3 minutes over our 3:15. And I want to.
One question.
Yes.
Could I get some feedback on the video and the sound quality using the system for those on the call?
It's the sound quality and the video have been awesome. The remote switching around has been a little difficult. We weren't able to see the PowerPoints when PowerPoints were used. So apparently the screen sharing doesn't work with this equipment.
Oh, I didn't have the screen share on. I will send both of those out to the people that were on the call and I'll put them on the website.
But all in all, I'd say this would be the preferred way to meet because, frankly, it saves you the travel costs. And we're cash strapped. I'm listening to all these wonderful plans to have ratings and all sorts of things. That calls for a budget of hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not going to do it with $500 from each state.
I think it's perfect. I mean, I'm seeing everybody and the whole thing. I think this is really, really good to be able to communicate this way.
I wish we were using this system in North Carolina when we have our executive committee meetings.
You can use it, and you can use it, I believe, free of charge as part of your NaCCRA membership.
I'm going to ask you all to teach me how to do it.
All right, with that, I guess we can adjourn this, but I hope this is just the first of many of dialogues that we open with you, the leaders of our state organizations. I thank you very much for your participation and your commentary.
I move we adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
What, you're gonna vote or something?
We have to vote an end to this. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.